Ooh, that's gotta hurt. It's the Wilk Report. I'm Michael Wilk, coming to you from Cleveland, Ohio, with a story continuing our ongoing Star Wars Rise of Skywalker dumpster fire. Because as you can see from the title cards, there's a huge disconnect between what critics think of the Rise of Skywalker and what the audience score thinks of Skywalker. Or the Fall of Skywalker, because it's really, the fall of the Skywalkers and the rise of the Palpatine, who usurps the Skywalker name. No thanks to Jar Jar Abrams and Rian Johnson, who between the two of them have pretty much destroyed Star Wars. So let's go ahead and get to our main article. This is Rotten Tomatoes. 57% on the tomato meter. 86% audience score. Total count as of today, Monday, December the 23rd, 2019. Tomato meter is 363 for critics, 37,571 for audience, and I have reason to suspect that 86% audience score might be artificially inflated. And yes, of course, I did leave my review because I did get to see the movie. Unfortunately, I didn't pay for it. Someone treated me to it, but it's bad, as in Brussels sprout bad. The movie is so utterly garbage. I mean, it's derivative.
So derivative, in fact, that in Europe it's considered plagiarized.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Herbert West. But, this is what Star Wars has come to, because of this utter garbage. But here's the interesting thing. The critics hate the movie for all the wrong reasons. Everything that they hate about The Rise of Skywalker, they loved in The Last Jedi. They're just too dishonest to admit it. So let me go ahead and read to you some of the reviews here. Critics saying the pettiness is strong with this one, basically an allusion to Jar Jar Abrams taking shots at The Last Jedi within the movie. It marks the return of the franchise to plotting movies. Well, that actually began with The Force Awakens, but it continued with the Last Jedi. Okay, Matt Lucas from the front row says, a naked exercise in retrograde nostalgia that is perfectly content with playing the hits but fails to provide anything new or exciting. Chris Wasser from the Irish Independent, the bad news is that it struggles to find a groove that fits. Charles Solomon, if K-Tel Records did an album of Star Wars greatest hits, this is what it would be like. So much of it felt like going through the motions of things we had seen before. Ouch. Which is right. Amy Nicholson from Film Week, you sense in this film Jar Jar shrinking that world. Everything in this franchise feels like a take-back. Chris Wasser, the Herald from Ireland, the ending makes no sense. It is, I'm sorry to say, an outrageously dull watch, a monumental disappointment, and a flimsy finale to the Skywalker saga. Sean Burns from New England Movies Weekly, the elephant in the room here is that they accidentally made a real movie last time. Well, no, they didn't. So, of course, Jar Jar Abrams was brought back on board to make sure nothing like that ever happens again. And, this is kind of emblematic of the overall tone of the critics, that they love the Last Jedi. In fact, let me go ahead and read you Jeff Beck of the Blue Spot, his review. Whereas Johnson's The Last Jedi had been daring, exciting, and encapsulated everything that makes Star Wars great. Well, no, it didn't. It wasn't daring, it wasn't exciting, and it didn't encapsulate everything that makes Star Wars great. It insulted everything that made Star Wars great. Which gives you an idea of just what kind of assholes and morons these people are. The Rise of Skywalker brings the trilogy to an end with a bland, dull, and very forgettable final entry. Jar Jar Abrams has twisted a beloved series of movies about how anybody has the power to defeat evil to preach a sermon enshrining the divine right of kings. I don't know where you get that from, but yeah. It whiffs on its biggest emotional moment. That's Joshua Rivera. Episode 9 is packed with Star Wars mumbo-jumbo and lots of fan-satisfying CGI. Speaking on behalf of non-fans, I thank the Force. It's done, over, finished, through, finally. Through Jar Jar Abrams' visually inert busyness, it heralds the death of cinematic communication, if not narrative coherence. Ouch. And that's from Armand White from the National Review, which is his far-right, typically dishonest... basically, it would be toilet paper if it existed on paper, but it's a website, so it's the internet version of toilet paper. Joshua Stearns of VitalThrills.com. It is a definition of derivative, which makes The Rise of Skywalker a copy of a copy.
So derivative, in fact, that in Europe it's considered plagiarized.
Faint, transparent, hazy on the details. Original score, 6 out of 10. I give it a 0 out of 10, but yeah, that's me. Chris McCoy of the Memphis Flyer. I had fun watching The Rise of Skywalker on opening night, but afterwards, during the traditional fan debates in the lobby, there were questions. As my wife said, I have notes. Ouch. Paul Whitington of the Irish Independent. George Lucas' 1977 original A New Hope was hokey and badly written, but had a kind of seat-of-the-pants magic about it. It also had soul, something this movie utterly lacks. It is shocking, truly shocking, how abjectly The Rise of Skywalker fails. Even the prequels, as shoddy as they were, at least offered something approaching a creative vision. And Brody, what she said, it's at a constant screech, which is numbing and dull, and results in an unemotional end to an otherwise harmless saga. Emmanuel Baez, a succession of decisions aimed at mitigating fans' malicious whims. Mario Alegre from Proxima Tanda. Not so much a continuation, but a tangent, an almost complete erasure of the bold choices. Yeah, right, bold. No, they were insulting choices made by Rian Johnson, which dared to expand the series' horizons. Well, no, it didn't. It sought to destroy the series completely. But Abrams has never been able to resist the dark power of the nostalgia. Okay, so, yeah, you're getting a sense of the critics being... Basically, the critics loved The Last Jedi, which was insulting, derivative, and really sought to destroy everything that people loved about the original Star Wars, and they shat all over the fans. And, I mean, basically, this entire Disney trilogy has been Rian Johnson and Jar Jar Abrams continually punching you in the head while screaming at the top of their lungs, "Look how clever I am! Look how clever I am! Don't you realize how clever I am, you toxic, misogynistic, racist, basement-dwelling man-babies? Look how clever I am!" That's basically the message that screams at you from shills for Disney. And we're seeing, you know, a pattern emerging from the critical reception to this movie, which is, again, it's about 57% on RottenTomatoes.com. But it basically is because they love The Last Jedi for destroying Star Wars, but they hate The Rise of Skywalker for destroying Star Wars. It's just not destroying Star Wars in the way they wanted it to be destroyed. Because these are people who obviously did not like the original trilogy or the prequels, and so they wanted something that would completely annihilate both. Well, they got it in The Last Jedi, but now, you know, they're pissed because Jar Jar Abrams came back to finish the destruction he started, and it didn't go well. But let's go ahead and read some more. An extravaganza of fan service exposition and lead-in MacGuffin-based plotting. There are some nice moments, though. I'm not exactly sure what, because it's utter irredeemable trash. There's nothing about this, nothing that you should even remotely like about this movie. It is pure garbage. The Force was not with director co-writer Jar Jar Abrams, who attacks the franchise with everything he's got, and Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker still misses its target. Ouch. It's very much time to put the Skywalkers to bed at last and free up the galaxy for entirely new possibilities. The Force is strong with them and all of that, but it's clear that there's nothing more to see here. That's Piers Marchant from the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Well, yeah, so basically he's a Southern Dixiecrat. Jar Jar Abrams' mechanical, nonsensical Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker contains so many resurrections, it's a wonder Disney and Lucasfilm didn't push back the release date from Christmas to Easter. That's from Michael Sragow from Film Comment Magazine. Ryan Sarek from The Reader in Omaha, Nebraska says, it is at best fine, and that's really what you want in a conclusion to a beloved, sometimes personality-defining series that has spanned more than 40 years, right? Fine. In quotes. Oh my god. Roger Moore of Movie Nation. No, not the Roger Moore, the actor. He's dead. No, this is Roger Moore, film critic. It ends just as predictably as it began, a trilogy of Star Wars movies built on George Lucas's greatest hits. Matthew Dougherty from The Filtered Lens. The Rise of Skywalker is a pitiful attempt to wrap up all 9 movies, an experience so whittled down by the corporate process that it falls completely flat. Emmanuel Noisette from the Movie Blog. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker is an emotionally charged, visually stunning, and action-packed close to the epic story that still manages to disappoint. It pandered to fans at the expense of telling a compelling story. Well, not really, because it pandered to people who are not fans of Star Wars. And that's actually the problem. If you had actually pandered to fans, you would have gotten an actual Star Wars movie. But I do agree with his point that he's trying to make, is that it's so much pandering to target demographics that it failed to tell a compelling story. So, Blake Howard of Dark Horizons. I detested Jar Jar Abrams' Star Wars: Rise of Skywalker. It's a shell of a movie, more machine now than ever. A twisted wreck of fan service, messy assembly of conveniences, lazy echoes, and callbacks to crashing into an aborted conclusion. So yeah, there's a lot of this going on. He's excuse me, just worked yesterday, and it's been awful, really awful, on my vocal cords. So yeah, because I had to do a lot of talking. So please bear with me. And I'll read a few more before I go on to the next bit here. There's something very off about The Rise of Skywalker, says Carl De Los Santos from Smash Cut Reviews. It sort of all just happens. There was no build-up, no suspense, there's nothing to experience, and I want a Star Wars to be an experience. Matthew Lacona from San Diego Reader. When we meet up with brash pilot Poe, he's light speed skipping his way out of trouble, and Abrams is in much the same mode, whisking you from one thing to the next, before you have much time to think or feel anything in response. Richard Brody of The New Yorker, one of the top critics, says the hermetic logic of the plot is as impeccable as it is ridiculous. It's drama crafted with robotic insularity for the consumption of viewers being rendered robotic at each moment of the soullessly uniform spectacle. Linda and Al Lerner. The script by Abrams and Chris Terrio has so much ground to cover that the Enterprise becomes a manic exercise trying to fit in plot points while stuffing the screen with hyper battles, light-speed space travel, and audio-pounding explosions. So yeah, this kind of gives you an idea, though, but the more I read of these reviews, the more I come to realize that these people hate The Rise of Skywalker for the wrong reasons. Because these people are not Star Wars fans. They despise Star Wars. And I think they got all giddy when Rian Johnson decided to destroy it on the big screen, doing even more damage than Jar Jar Abrams had done with The Force Awakens. Rian Johnson comes along, decides to toss out the half-assed plan that Bob Iger had come up with, and basically made finishing this trilogy all but impossible for even the most talented director, so naturally they brought back Jar Jar Abrams, who's a no-talent hack. So, yeah. And then, of course, we get to our next bit, because, yeah, if you think critics were the only ones who don't like it, according to Cinema Blend, Gina Carbone, Mandalorian actor slams Rise of Skywalker as the worst Star Wars movie. Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker was an infuriating fucking failure with more plot holes than plot. Wait, is this coming from Cinema Blend? Oh my god. The worst Star Wars movie. That's according to Jake Canavale, who also happened to play aspiring bounty hunter guild member Toro Calican in Disney Plus's The Mandalorian Chapter 5. Jake Canavale is also the son of actor Bobby Cannavale, grandson of Sidney Lumet, and great-grandson of Lena Horne. The family history may not be too relevant. Well, actually it is, because Sidney Lumet was actually, quite a great director. But let's move on. The family history may not be too relevant, but it's interesting that he's part of the Star Wars galaxy and yet willing to burn it down because he's so mad about how the Skywalker saga ended. He's not alone in feeling disappointed with The Rise of Skywalker, but most critics are not also recent actors in his Star Wars project. Hands down, the worst Star Wars movie, an absolute fucking failure. At any rate, Jake Canavale took to his Instagram stories to share several posts on his anger, starting with this. I'm in the Star Wars universe now, so surely I can't speak ill of Episode 9, right? Wrong. Rise of Skywalker was hands down the worst Star Wars movie, an absolute fucking failure. Went to see it last night and I woke up still mad. Like, it rendered the entire new trilogy completely useless. There were more plot holes than there was plot. The amount of by the ways was absolutely infuriating. Rise of Skywalker, by the way, dumbass title, was worse than Phantom Menace and Last Jedi combined. Fight me. Okay, so I'm going to disagree with him here, because I actually think that The Phantom Menace was the best of the prequel trilogies, with Attack of the Clones being worse, and then Revenge of the Sith with its lumbering dialogue and plot holes and plodding along until the climax. Yeah, that to me was the worst of the trilogy, but that's my opinion. He's got his, and okay, fine, whatever. But yeah, Rise of Skywalker is a dumbass title because it's not about the rise of Skywalker. It's about the rise of a Palpatine usurping the Skywalker name. Nobody rises in this movie. Oh my god. So in case it wasn't clear that he was mad, he posted that he was so mad a few more times. He also answered a fan's question asking if he'd be just as upset about Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker if he had been an actor in that movie. Here's what he said. Honestly, I think I'd be more mad. Obviously, I can't speak on behalf of the cast. To some actors, this is just a job, and maybe they're just happy to be working, to which I say more power to them. Also, maybe they fucking love the new Star Wars, in which case that's fucking dope that they got to work on something they truly got to enjoy. Personally, I've been a huge Star Wars fan since I was a kid, and I felt pretty let down by the overall laziness of this new trilogy, and also a bit angry at the entitlement of it for pretty much seizing control of the franchise as a whole by basically saying, no, we don't like the ending that everybody's been cool with for decades. Let's change it. I personally would feel pretty depressed if I was in the new Star Wars movie as a main character. I mean, if I was a dude wearing an alien puppet or whatever, I'd be fucking stoked. But still, and here's this whole post on the subject. But yeah, so yeah, then there are now multiple reasons why we probably won't see Toro Calican again after his one episode of The Mandalorian. Well, also because his character got killed. So yeah, he's pretty much gone. At any rate, The Mandalorian Season 1 is ending with Chapter 8, Episode 8 this coming Friday, December 27th on Disney Plus. Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is earning mixed reviews from critics, leaning toward negative, but the fan scores have been higher. Have you seen it yet? Unfortunately, yes. And it's actually, I wouldn't call it the worst Star Wars movie because it's not even a Star Wars movie. You have to actually be a Star Wars movie to be the worst Star Wars movie. And none of the movies in the sequel trilogy or the Disney trilogy have been Star Wars movies. Much like Jar Jar Abrams' reboot of Star Trek and Alex Klutzman's STD and Picard and Lower Decks and all the other garbage he's been greenlit to produce. It's not Star Trek. It's just some cynical marketing ploy with the Star Trek or Star Wars in this case label slapped onto it, and you're being ordered, not even asked, but ordered to love it and buy it and accept it and, demand more of this shallow one-dimensional insult to your intelligence. But yeah, this is what it's come down to, people. Have you? Yeah. So yeah, but yeah. So obviously, this person is not a fan of the Phantom Menace, but yeah. So when even actors from other parts of the Disney Star Wars universe say that it's utter garbage, yeah, it's garbage. So here's Box Office Mojo weighing in. Star Wars Rise of Skywalker delivers $175.5 million debut, while Cats calls up a furball. This is from yesterday, December 22nd, by Brad Brevet at Box Office News. Disney's Star Wars Rise of Skywalker led the weekend box office, so there is likely to be a bit of pushing and pulling from analysts as to whether the film's $175.5 million debut is a worthy opening for the final installment of the now 42-year-old Skywalker saga. Meanwhile, Universal's Cats fell well short of expectations and appears to have already been left out in the rain. With a $175.5 million three-day debut, Disney's Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker delivered the third largest December opening of all time. Are you sure? Because if that's not adjusting for inflation, you're wrong. While the performance tops the studio's conservative $165 million opening, many, including Box Office Mojo, expecting the movie to top $200 million for the weekend, and the slide to $175.5 million is a bit below where expectations were just yesterday, when it appeared the film would open anywhere from $190 to $195 million after Friday estimates. The slide began following the movie's opening day, which was pretty much on par with most recent Star Wars releases, which saw preview grosses making up 44% of the movie's opening day. However, it is the only Star Wars release of the 5 released by Disney thus far to see the Friday gross make up over 50% of the movie's total opening weekend, which brings into question what kind of impact word of mouth will have on the movie's final gross. And this is what the problem is, because, in fact, let me go ahead and highlight this next paragraph. While The Force Awakens and Rogue One saw multiples that came in at least 3.78 times and 3.43 times respectively, The Last Jedi and Solo could only muster multiples finishing at 2.82 times and 2.53 times respectively. That said, the 4 previous Star Wars releases saw multiples averaging 3.14 times, which would give The Rise of Skywalker a $551 million domestic run, which is hardly a small number. But it does show a downward trend for the brand following the massive performance for The Force Awakens in 2015. Of this weekend's audience, 59% were male and 64% of the crowd was aged 25 or older, all of which pretty much lines up with the last 4 Star Wars releases. So the movie's B+ cinema score is the first Star Wars film outside of 2008's animated Clone Wars to receive a cinema score outside the A range. Internationally, Rise of Skywalker delivered a $198 million debut overseas from 52 markets, giving the movie a $373.5 million global launch. Problem is, it needs to be making at least $659 million global launch, but yeah, that's... Leading the way was the United Kingdom with a $26.8 million opening, followed by Germany, $21.8 million, France, $15.2 million, Japan, $14.6 million, Australia, $12.6 million, China, $12.1 million, Spain, $7.6 million, Mexico, $7.4 million, Brazil, $5.9 million, Italy, $5.9 million, Russia, $5.8 million, and Sweden, $4.6 million. So wait, Russia only brought in $5.8 million for The Rise of Skywalker. Oh my god, it's Russian trolls. They're interfering. Oh my god. The movie is now open in 98% of the international marketplace, with January debuts still set for Vietnam, Korea, and the Philippines. So, yeah, this movie is opening below expectations, as a lot of us predicted. And personally, I don't think it's going to make much more than this, because word of mouth is traveling fast. The YouTubeosphere is almost universally denouncing this movie as nothing but one insulting contrivance after another. Oh my fucking god. Oh yeah, Meriadoc Brandybuck, the guy who played Merry the Hobbit in The Lord of the Rings, is in The Rise of Skywalker offering pointless exposition and nothing else. What the actual fuck? I mean, come on. People, if this is the best you can do, then you're in trouble. You are. There's no getting around the fact that this is not good for Lucasfilm. Bob Iger supposedly got the final cut, basically lying to Jar Jar Abrams, which, is not without precedence because he lied to George Lucas. So yeah, why not lie to Jar Jar Abrams and promise him final cut? And then of course, Midnight's Edge, I believe, is reporting that Jar Jar Abrams agreed to come back with the provision that he be given total creative control, but because people were walking out of test screenings, Bob Iger decided to go what he thought would produce the most profit for the movie, which may or may not be the case if these rumors are true, but here's a problem with that. If the Iger cut ends up failing to make a profit at the box office, because right now, this movie probably has only made back its production budget. Or maybe not quite its production budget. If rumors are to be believed, it might have gone as high as $400 to $500 million total budget. Because you're taking into account the marketing and distribution and merchandising and all that other stuff that people don't take into account. So it hasn't made its budget back. And if it continues to slide downward, because second week openings, typically tend to show, how much staying power a movie has in the cinema. Joker is still playing in the cinemas. That's how popular it is. It opened in October, November, and it's still playing. That movie's got legs. It has topped over $1 billion at the box office on a total budget that is probably a tenth of what it's made at the global box office. I mean, that's a huge return on investment. With this one, if this movie doesn't do $2 billion, it will have been an utter failure because, hell, if it doesn't do $1 billion, it will have been an utter failure. It might break even, or it might even lose money at the box office because so much was spent making and marketing this movie. I mean, they were doing shoots right up until this month. Literally 3 weeks ago is when they wrapped. And this is the best they could come up with. And the critics, those shallow, one-dimensional ass clowns, they've trashed the movie not because they realize it for the fraud that it is, but because it doesn't destroy the Skywalker legacy in the way that Rian Johnson sought to destroy it. That's what it's come to, people. Rotten Tomatoes. And the critics bashing the movie because it didn't destroy Star Wars the way they wanted it to be destroyed. Meanwhile, you've got actors from the Star Wars universe, well, Disney Star Wars universe, anyway, not the actual Star Wars universe, trashing the movie. You've got pretty much everyone on YouTube trashing the movie. And this is the best that people can come up with, is that, the audience score is at 86%. But again, what have we learned from Rotten Tomatoes? That corporations can and do inflate audience scores or deflate them to try and jack up the percentage. because it's all about the appearance of success, not the actual success. But this is what it's come to, where the critics have turned on Disney Star Wars because it didn't destroy it the way they wanted it to be destroyed. Yeah. That's what it's come to. This is what Star Wars has come to. Unbelievable. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think I'm full of it? Do you think I'm onto something? Let me know why. If you like what you've heard and you want to hear more, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to receive notifications whenever we upload new content. And make sure to select all, because YouTube actually is cleaning house of inactive users, and that takes people's subscribers away because those accounts no longer exist. So make sure you're still subscribed. Like this video. Share it to as many venues as possible. If you want to help support the channel, head over to our Patreon or subscribe to our page. I've also got a tech fundraiser link below in the description. Until next time, this is Michael Wilk for the Wilk Report saying take care, good night, I'm out.